Hello friends, my name is Sunil Ranjan and I am an English faculty member. Now here I have come up with Preface to Shakespeare by Dr. Samuel Johnson. So here I begin. And one thing I must remind you that when you are writing any answer, if you write your answers with points, you will be scoring high marks in the examination. Well, this is a technique to ensure that you get high marks in your examination. So now, here I begin. Even after 400 years, William Shakespeare continues to be the most popular poet and dramatist in English literature. His writings have greatly shaped the literature and culture of the Western world. The different facets of his plays and poems are still being analyzed by critics for their literary merits. The longevity of his appeal is still a striking feature that often astonishes the literary world. Dr. Samuel Johnson, however, warned against such estimations of greatness showered upon him by reminding his contemporaries that often undue praises are lavished on the dead. With his publication, The Plays of William Shakespeare, in 1765, Johnson contributed to the history of Shakespearean criticism. His work remains relevant even today because it continues to affect the way critics approach Shakespeare. Johnson's preface has retained its influence to the present day. Now, the first point, Shakespeare's enduring popularity. I repeat, Shakespeare's enduring popularity. Johnson explains Shakespeare's merits determined by his enduring popularity. He walks the middle ground with his critique of antiquity. He neither fully embraces longevity as a litmus test of quality nor rejects it as meaningless. He points to those works which have withstood the test of time and stand out not because of their age alone, but because they have been compared with other works of the same kind. He elevates Shakespeare as the poet of nature. The nature captured by Shakespeare's character shows in the ease and simplicity of their dialogues. He speaks of Shakespeare's realism that distinguishes him from other playwrights. He says that the distinctions of character stressed by Voltaire and Rhymer impose only artificial burdens on the natural genius of Shakespeare. He admits that Shakespeare's works cannot be fairly called comedies or tragedies. Now, the next point, that is the second point, Shakespeare's imperfections. I repeat, the point is Shakespeare's imperfections. Johnson views the tragicomedies of Shakespeare as distinctly natural in their interchange of seriousness and merriment and holds up a faithful mirror of manners and life. Without hesitation, Johnson writes about Shakespeare's imperfections. He speaks of Shakespeare's loosely formed plots, his coarse jokes, and most ironically, his disproportionate pomp of diction and a boring circumlocution. He criticizes Shakespeare for his lack of moral purpose and the one who sacrifices virtues to convenience and abandons his duty as an author. He finds it to be Shakespeare's greatest flaw, though his other merits cannot be played down. Now, the next point is defense of Shakespeare. I repeat, defense of Shakespeare. Now, in his preface, Johnson ceases his attack on Shakespeare and begins to defend him again. Johnson defends Shakespeare's employment of unity of action, though he admits that Shakespeare deviates slightly by allowing his plots to be in accord with nature. He dismisses the value of the unity and says that it arises from the necessity of making the drama credible. He says that such credibility is impossible since the very nature of drama is beyond the reach of reason. He says that spectators are always in their senses and know from the first act to the last that the stage is only a stage and that the players are only players. The imagination of the audience does not go beyond the end of the play. He reverses the entire concept through which unity is used. He changes Shakespeare's drawback into an asset and appreciates it. Despite Shakespeare's lack of any impressive background, the quality of his work is amazing. It is his spontaneous and unbiased observation which makes him the poet of nature and frees his work from many forms of criticism. At a time when the English had no model of literary excellence, Shakespeare produced such a model. Johnson hails such an achievement of Shakespeare as phenomenal. Now, the next point, assessment of the works of previous editors of Shakespeare. I repeat, assessment of the works of previous editors of Shakespeare. Now, Johnson reviews the works of previous editors of Shakespeare, and after assessing his predecessors, Johnson explains his own methodology. Johnson felt that no existing edition could be considered authoritative, so he undertook to create his own edition. In his work, he regretted Shakespeare's disregard for the preservation of his plays. He says that if Shakespeare had released an authorized edition of his works during his lifetime, the 18th century editors such as Rowe, Pope, Hanmer, Theobald, and Warburton would not have corrupted his passages. Johnson's preface to Shakespeare has been both acclaimed and condemned. Many of his contemporaries singled it out as a fine piece of writing containing much truth, good sense, and just criticism. His comprehensive views and expressions made the critics hail it as a classic. T.S. Eliot praised his lucidity in identifying Shakespeare's genre, the distinction between the tragic and the comic. He shared Johnson's distaste for the superficial distinctions through which Shakespeare's plays had been labeled tragic, comic, and historic. In the interchange of tragic and comic scenes, Eliot felt that Shakespeare produced literature that was true to life. Donald Green held that Johnson gave the 18th century's critics their first really effective and memorable expression. Harold Bloom singles out Johnson as the foremost of interpreters and first among all Western literary critics. As long as scholars continue to examine Shakespeare, Johnson's work will remain important. So friends, here I come to the end of the explanation of this topic, Preface to Shakespeare. And if you have subscribed to my channel, thank you. If you haven't, and if you choose to subscribe, I promise that I'll be coming up with quality videos for you from time to time, and that will also ensure you're getting high marks in your examination. Thank you.